All right, perfect. We're live, right?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Monica. All righty. So thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. I wanted to start off just by introducing myself and talking a little bit about what Palm Beach Tech is. So my name is Nikki Caboose. I'm the VP of Development at Palm Beach Tech. And basically, to give everybody an overview, Palm Beach Tech, we are a technology nonprofit. We started in downtown West Palm, built out into a county-wide organization. And we actually just announced about a month ago that we're going to be expanding to become a regional South Florida organization. So my name is Nikki. Oh, sorry. Did I do something wrong there, Monica?
Okay, that was me.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? So actually what we're doing this morning is we have a series of career workshops that we're doing every Tuesday at 10 a.m. leading up until our virtual career expo on July 15th, which is Wednesday, which also happens to be our 5th year anniversary. So today, this morning, we have Dr. Maryann Tobin from the University of Miami that's going to be speaking about the importance of soft skills. And I will make sure to drop some links and some information in the chat as well for anybody that's in here on Zoom with us about the upcoming Career Expo, our upcoming events, things like that. But just to give everybody, again, an idea is if anybody is in the tech community, whether you are a headquartered company, a university, a coding school, just looking for work within the tech community, you know, our whole goal and mission is to build South Florida into a tech hub. So we definitely want to offer the resources and the connections that people need to upskill themselves and stay here, of course, to keep people here in South Florida and attract new businesses and new talent to the area as well. So Dr. Tobin, if you want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and then please feel free to take it away.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me today. I'm really excited. I'm going to just start my screen share and make sure everybody can see. So thanks so much for allowing me to speak today, Nikki, and to everyone at Palm Beach Tech, soon South Florida Tech now. Disclaimer, I'm not a tech person. I'm a liberal arts person that has become immersed in the tech world through education and through some of the graduate programs that we have now at the University of Miami. We're really excited to be gearing up for the Career Expo. UM will be there virtually, and not just to talk about our programs, but and our upskilling opportunities through certificates and things like that, but to also engage in dialogue with all of you and to introduce you to some of our faculty and some of the research that we have been doing ongoing and are starting anew with the launch of a very robust data science program, which I'll talk about at the end of my presentation. So I basically started in the humanities and migrated to the social sciences. I am the assistant dean for professional education at the University of Miami. I'm specifically at the College of Arts and Sciences. We are the largest academic unit at the University of Miami. We're responsible for about 40% of the coursework and teaching that goes on campus. There are 12 schools and colleges, and we're the big man on campus, so to speak. But I'm a triple K, and I'm actually very proud that I'm back working at my alma mater. I was an undergrad, and then I went into teaching. So I was a K-12 English teacher, high school English teacher, and then I expanded into literacy education in the elementary grades before going back to school and getting my MFA, and I have a Ph.D. in teaching and learning. And the reason that I'm so fascinated by interdisciplinarity and the incorporation of technology in the classroom is that was the study of my dissertation. Long ago in 2009, when things like digital storytelling were brand new, and infusing sort of tablet technology in the classroom was, in the very early stages. That's what I studied. I studied how that impacted the literacy comprehension of sixth graders, actually, specifically when they transition from elementary school to middle and on to high school, their tech literacy, how that affected their ability to read and write on paper. So fun work that I got to do, and that led me to Nova Southeastern University, where I was Associate Professor of Education for 8 years. That is in Fort Lauderdale, as many of you may know, and I live in South Miami. So the commute was wearing on me, and as much as I love my students at Nova, and I will always be a shark deep down in my heart I had an opportunity to return to UM, making my commute about 10 minutes on a good day. And I've been back there since 2017 in the role of Executive Director of Programs, and now I've been promoted to Assistant Dean last year. I work as a consultant. I put a married mom of 2 girls just as a disclaimer because I'm at home and so are they. They are 7 and 3. So they could enter at any moment, or they could also have some laughter or some sibling disagreements. There could be a barking dog, you know, it's the new normal, right? So what do I do? Well, my job is to oversee a very interesting catalog of professional master's programs and interdisciplinary undergraduate programs. And these are programs that maintain a research focus. And we are a research one institution. So all of the faculty at the University of Miami are also practicing researchers in their field. When you go to your English class, you are taking classes with someone who is a working English literary critic. Or when you're going into your chemistry class, that professor also has a lab, a working chemistry lab that's working on NSF funded projects. And they're also teaching you. So that's when you see research one and having a high level of research productivity, that's what you're talking about. The fact that the faculty, the people teaching you every day, are also working as academics in the field, as opposed to being a teaching college, which is one where the primary responsibility of the faculty is their teaching load. So the outcomes of these programs are different. When you're talking about a professional program in that sense of term, we use that term a lot now to define research programs versus professional programs. The master's programs that are categorized as professional do have a higher focus on what it takes to enter the job market. Our job is not to prepare you in a one-year master's program to go into academia, although you will do research and you will write, you will work with these faculty, but we're preparing you to go into the job market. And we have a higher level of experiential learning assignments, applications to practical business, career, internships are more common in these types of programs. And we have alumni and sort of community networks that make sure that students that are in the programs that I oversee at some point in their path, they have an internship or some sort of networking experience. Maybe someone from the industry comes into the classroom and works with students for a couple of weeks, and they make that connection so that as you're going through your course of study, you're also building these career skills that will lead you to employment on the other side. Of course, that's not something we can guarantee, and it's exceedingly difficult in today's times, but we are giving you all the setup so that you have it, and we are doing our best at a private Research One institution to build those connections so that you have several avenues that you can pursue once you graduate. So I oversee the office that does that. It's a mouthful. It's the Office of Interdisciplinary and Professional Studies, but we just call it IPS for short. Anyway, who's hiring, right? Who's hiring in the pandemic? Because all we see every day is this sort of very dreary data that comes out on the worst unemployment rates we've seen since the Great Depression, and how on earth are we're going to be able to find a job. We just graduated an entire class of undergraduates in May that are now going to flood the job market, and meanwhile companies are doing furloughs and layoffs. So who's hiring? Well, in the pandemic, some of them are pretty obvious choices, right? Supply chain delivery companies are still hiring. I personally am responsible for keeping Amazon and Instacart in business. But anything that's involved in fulfilling the supply needs, whether it's stocking, production, manufacturing, distribution, delivery services, grocers, obviously, those essential needs that we know, regardless of how bad COVID may get, we still need goods and services of that kind. So all of those companies are hiring. And I'm not saying that, you're going to get your college degree and go become an Instacart delivery person, but it's more that company is hiring at all levels. There are logistical levels, communication that needs to happen, IT on the back end, user experience, interfaces that need to be adapted. So those companies are hiring across the board. Similarly, enterprise software and network solutions kind of goes without saying, because every company, from my mom's very small construction company to the University of Miami, has now instituted some sort of large-scale network solutions platform. where maybe they've realized, well, we're all remote, so rather than have our secretary who's been there forever handwriting checks for payroll, we're going to use Paylocity, or we're going to improve and optimize our tech service by using some sort of enterprise software. So those companies are also hiring. Online learning, right? Of course, because without with very little warning, everybody from pre-K all the way up through graduate school went online with the snap of a finger in March. And some of them did it rather well and were well prepared. Some of them struggled, and rightly so. I've taught online, I've taught K-12 online, and I taught college classes online, and it is a very different beast. There's a lot more front-end preparation than you might think. And I think there's a misconception that online classes are, quote, easier. But if you are a person who struggles in any way reading English, if English is not your first language, if reading is something that you've struggled with and you're more of a visual or an auditory learner, switching to the online environment can be very challenging because written communication is still the primary medium in online. Your professor is going to post articles. They're going to expect you to respond to discussion questions. And yes, you can Zoom, and Zoom is wonderful, but Zoom's only a part of it. And you're still, particularly if you're someone who struggles with a couple of, different, very concrete learning modalities. My daughter is one of these. She's very artistic. She's very visual, and she's 7 years old, and she talks with her hands a lot. And I'm thinking, she had a struggle, but she adapted. She did all right. And actually she ended up flourishing because learning one-on-one for her ended up being better. I like to learn in a group. So learning just with me and my laptop is something that I would have found very challenging. But no, she loved it. Once she figured out the best way to communicate for her, she flew, and she actually wants to stay in virtual school next year. So I could have a virtual second grader in my house. Anyway, healthcare services, obviously still hiring, particularly nursing and in-home care, biotech, research, pharmaceuticals, kind of goes without saying. If you're doing COVID-19 research, you probably have work. But if you are considering going back to school or upskilling, if you will, or looking at making a transition into the healthcare field, something to keep in mind. The clinical aspects that these degree programs typically have to have their accreditation and to get the students licensed correctly are going to be drastically altered. So, you want to look for a program that already has some sort of built-in simulated experiences. There are a lot of sim hospitals out there, so they should already be embedded in the curriculum, because basically you could go through your series of coursework and then it'll be time to do your in-service. And I can't imagine in a year a school or a hospital is going to be able to easily get clearance for outsiders to come in and do pre-service work. So if you've ever interned, at a school or at a hospital or any place where you'd have to get a security clearance before going in, bringing in an outsider in the COVID world is probably not going to be their top priority. So just something to keep in mind as you, if you're considering going into one of those fields. Who's not hiring? Kind of the obvious: hospitality, tourism, some financial services, some marketing. It really depends. Digital marketing is hiring in certain aspects, but then companies that are enduring budget cuts, the University of Miami being one of them, usually the ad budget is the first one to get cut. Usually media and entertainment, for obvious reasons, not the place you want to be looking at jobs right now. And I throw universities out there too. It says universities, typically education is one of those recession-proof jobs, but we're on a little bit of a hold. We are not sure how many students are going to be able to come to campus in the fall. So there's, as I mentioned before we started recording, to some of the people who are on here earlier, we are doing amazing things to prepare classroom spaces so that we can have students on campus. The president of the university is a public health researcher, and he was the former Minister of Health for Mexico and Dean of the Harvard School for Public Health. So we are on the front lines and really doing our best to be leaders in the idea of having socially distanced classrooms established, but also having online resources and hybridization ready so that, heaven forbid there's something that happens, we're able to be online, or students who come to class and are high risk themselves Just because you're under 65 doesn't mean you don't have other ways of being high risk, but they're still able to join us and be part of the experience. We're actually really looking forward to it. We are very resilient at because we have to deal with major hurricanes every couple of years, as many Florida universities know, or I should say sort of Eastern Seaboard kind of universities are ready to go. So this is just a new ready to go challenge that we're really looking forward to meeting. I kind of threw out there in a goofy way because when I was doing a search for some of the firms that we're still hiring right now, Grammarly came up, and so did Zynga as internet companies. So if you have a niche in internet gaming or any kind of internet-based service that provides something that you might not be able to get in person, if you had an editor that you were working with, you'd go one-on-one or something. There's a lot because we're doing a lot more online publishing. Those companies also had quite a few job posts. Anyway, so the time for sort of upskilling. This is a term that we look for. And what are people looking for? These firms that are hiring, they're looking for certain things that are difficult to define, right? Ability to work remotely kind of goes without saying. I think now, regardless of what field you're in, you need to have some facility and some productivity to work remotely. So anything you can put on a resume or demonstrate that you've been able to adapt to working remotely, and whether that means that you're dealing with, kids, dogs, a husband who's using all your bandwidth as well with their VPN, for example, or just your ability to manage your time. Work-life balance is something that people who have worked in HR and have done any work in institutional culture knows that work-life balance is something that we have protected as a people, as a unit for such a long time. And now that's really out the window. I'm sure many of you are experiencing something similar, but there's definitely a lot more late night hours that I would not normally be working, but I've got my kids at home. I was teaching them homeschooling, first grade and pre-K 4, during the latter part of the spring. So can you work from home successfully remotely? And can you demonstrate that you're able to do that? Written communication, as I said, is still the king. Oral communication is too, but it is mostly written. How you write an email, the tone in which you write your emails. I mean, if we ever had a time where email tone is critical, we are all stressed, we are all tired, we are very quick to fire off an email that might be more strongly worded than we would say to that person's face. And those are all examples of ways that you can convey collaborativity or collegiality through email that are really hard to put on a resume. What are you going to put a bullet that says, I'm nice on emails? So you have to be able to demonstrate this in other ways, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. I mentioned time management. Coding, for those of you that code or do any data management, that's what a lot of companies are looking for now. And creativity, or better yet, innovation. Being able to convey ideas is very valuable, but also being able to improve your candidate profile by being creative as it pertains to the working world. So can you come up with those new ideas, those out of the box problem solving value adds that you might bring to a discussion? I think about things, very concrete things like data management. You can synthesize data and translate it and sort of figure out the best way to even visualize it and make a decision based on the data. But when you're thinking of what to do, how flexible are you in understanding the research and translating and compiling whatever data that you're working with? You have to show in an interview and in your portfolio or your resume what value you add. I think about cognitive flexibility as sort of a really interesting term. It doesn't really refer to your gymnastic abilities, but it refers to, can you tailor your conversation and your approach to the people that you're interacting with, whether it's via Zoom or another way, to the situation? Do you talk to the custodian the same way that you talk to the CEO? This kind of goes back to written communication, right? An email. Do you customize your sales approach with each client? this is a really in-demand skill. So is EQ, your intelligence, I'm sorry, not your intelligence quotient, your emotional quotient. Customer service is everywhere. Even if you're not, someone who works in retail, you deal with some element of conveying to the outside world in the various ways. And whether it's a customer or a client that keeps the lights on at your business, how can you show an employer that you know how to deal with them when the going gets tough, which is now? This is the tough. This is the toughest that most of us will ever see in our lifetime. So, can you somehow show that you are able to manage the stress of the situation and all of the existential dread that's going on, and still, be a person that is supportive, that's a team player, that's bought into the institutional culture. It's easy to do it at a university, particularly because many of us that work there are also alums, or we are, excited about football, or we love to throw up the U or get our picture taken with Sebastian. And those are all little nuggets that build this empathy for the institution, this buy-in that we know that we are the best place for anyone to come and learn. We are global and multicultural and forward-thinking and inclusive. And those are all things that really, regardless of your job, at least at they grow within you from the inside out. We are one you, it's all about the you. All of those things that we say as mantras, we really do. We believe and we feel and we are very passionate about. So your EQ is not just how you treat the people that you interact with every day, but the face that you are of your company, of your institution. And you really, it's not just about loving the work that you do, but it's also about loving the place where you work. And lastly, what are people looking for now? Well, they're looking for resilience and adaptability. I think, we are transforming at we're transforming education into the post-pandemic world. Pandemic was a board game and it was things that happened in the past. So you can sit through a class and learn all about the Black Plague and think, oh, well, that's in the history books. And no, it's not. So how are we adapting what we're teaching so that every single student that comes through our doors now and over the next 4 years of their undergrad and graduate education are ready to go into a world that's been so changed by this? So the time for upskilling. I know upskilling is traditionally a tech term, but I did a little Google, let my fingers do the searching. And according to LinkedIn, I was kind of glad to hear, because LinkedIn put out a list of skills to get you hired during the pandemic in 2020. And on the left-hand side, you see all of the tech upskills that you can adapt: blockchain, obviously data analytics, user experience design, marketing, video production and stuff. And they listed these 5 things on the right: creativity, persuasion, collaboration, adaptability, and emotional intelligence. So, in the micro context of an upskill, it's the process of learning a new skill, right? And dealing with this sort of tectonic workplace shift caused by technology. If you're someone who's been working at your company for 30 years and all of a sudden and doing payroll one way with Excel and checks, and then all of a sudden they decide to buy into Paylocity, and you sit through several seminars to sort of upskill yourself on how to deal with it with the new enterprise software, that's one thing. But think about how that skill, that tool fits into the bigger picture of the success of your organization. And that's where adaptability comes in, and collaboration. And we don't teach classes on this. We teach this in every class in one way or the other. So these are the so-called soft skills. And I don't mean to talk down on them, because I don't think they're soft skills at all. I think they are essential skills. So we're going to get rid of that term. And we're going to talk about the essential skills that everybody who comes into a job must have. They must be proficient communicators in any medium, whether it's written communication, oral communication, visual communication, how we represent data, everything from our own personal data to the data of the world. Think about what reading the world meant 5 years ago, 10 years ago, what it means today. There is, I've been watching a lot of Disney Plus, obviously, with the little ones at home. Thank goodness for streaming video. And there's a show on, I think it's called The Big Fib. It's a little silly. It's definitely for kids, but it's basically to tell the truth, but for children. And it starts out with a kind of, very easy, silly round where the child who is, maybe an 8 or 10-year-old, and they have to sort of pick like who's the real hairdresser. And the one person comes out and she's got beautiful hair, and she talks about, she ended up being the hairdresser on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert. And she was the real one. And then the other one is like super tacky and, chewing, I don't know, like chewing with her mouth open. And she's got like this, ostentatious purse and this crazy hair. So clearly you could say, okay, who's legit and who's a caricature of what that, she's like, every time she's talking, she's spraying hairspray, and it's funny. That's the first round. The second round, though, is more difficult. And I think the episode we watched last week was 2 people who were jellyfish aquarists at claiming to be that they were experts in jellyfish. And the child, who's the contestant, has to ask, just like you went on to tell the truth with this sort of panel, and one person's real and 2 people are faking it, ask these questions. But I have to say, I was stumped. They brought in a very great actress and the real person, and she was able to give pretty convincing clues. And the goal of the show, it's fun to watch for the kids, but you're reading into it. It's like, this is a sort of quote unquote silly game show that's really teaching our kids the essence of figuring out truth in what people are saying. And the kid was cute when he was right when he made his decision. He said, well, when she started to answer my question, she wasn't looking me in the eye, or she started to fumble over her facts. So all this little nuance of communication, the contestant kid was really reading into. And I was like, okay, that's such a clever premise, because we think about teaching kids fact or fiction, but fact means something very different today than it meant a few years ago. And how do we get our children, who are going to be the next consumers of information, they already are, and they're not only going to be the consumers, but the decision makers down the road. How do we train them up in determining these skills? What is important? You cannot believe everything that you read or hear. How do you, what are you looking for in authenticity and in fact and in truth and in data and in reading research, and understanding spin? So communication proficiency, sharing thoughts in an effective manner, and being able to explore not only written and oral, but the sort of the digital realm of how we communicate and how we transmit data in a clear and efficient manner. In Florida, we already had issues with data representation on the Department of Health websites through ArcGIS, which is seemingly a seemingly innocent software that does the work, but there's still a human that inputs what gets sent out, and how is that managed and then interpreted by people doing the interpreting. Teamwork goes without saying, and we think of teamwork as we're working in a group, even though we're working in isolation. How well do we get along with our fellow people? I think, Nikki, you mentioned this earlier. People get hired because of the skill, but then they can get let go because of a softer, now an essential skill, that they're just not collaborative. They can't work in a group. And yes, they look great on paper and they have all this great education, but you get them in there and they are they're just not working with the mix of the office or the institutional culture. Can they think and reason with any proficiency? Can they have workplace professionalism? We need to prepare our workforce for a global workforce, and workplace professionalism, which kind of goes hand in hand with teamwork, leadership, and work ethic. Not just your ethics, your personal right and wrong, but also your work ethic, your ability to be committed to the work that you're doing. This is empowering. This is what has individuals see and shape and benefit. And frankly, when the rubber meets the road, as it is for many companies right now, and furloughs and layoffs start happening, you want to be on the good list. I mean, if you're a person that will always go that extra mile, will always offer, through critical thinking, will always offer an interesting opinion, you're not afraid to share ideas, you have that institutional culture, you have the institution's best interest at heart. That shows to the people around you, and it shows to your superiors. And yes, I know a lot of times when those really tough decisions get made, and you've got two, equally competent, equally trained people, whether it's to hire them or in many cases to decide who gets furloughed for a couple months because we have to cut something. You want to be this person that gets retained. And these skills that are brought to the table are what's going to give you that anchor, what's going to hold you in the organization's sort of sight, and people will fight for you if you are the person, if you're a person that is got this and is worth fighting for, because you fight for the place where you work or the place where you want to work. So as I mentioned, I'm in the liberal arts, and that's a term that we throw out a lot. Liberal from libere, the term for free. It's not a political term. It's just a term for the free arts, meaning that we study a little bit of everything and how they interconnect. So this is an image from the New Republic from last week. It's last month, I'm sorry. It's a May 27th publication of the New Republic, and it's the case for liberal arts education in a time of crisis. It's a link I can send out to share with you all later. It's something I compel to your reading if you're interested. But I wanted to read to you just a small excerpt. So what the liberal arts does is enables us to navigate the core challenges arising from our embattled civic order: climate change, inequality, mass incarceration, and immigration, while exploring broader, more inclusive concepts of common good. Exploring means questions receiving truth, being open to new understanding and ways of thinking. This is the core method behind educational inquiry of all kinds. When we think this way, we're not simply reflecting on an issue or problem in isolation. We're thinking through it. We're thinking with empathy and seeing new ways of cultures, beliefs, and even realities we once described as other. So I wanted to read that because it's such a compelling article. It's written by the president of Lewis and Clark College. And these small liberal arts colleges that are typically 4-year, many of them are in sort of New England and up the East Coast, are sort of hubs of learning, and they're really struggling right now, but they're seeing a regrowth because so much is going on that we need this sort of centered core of learning. Believe it or not, approximately 60% of undergraduate humanities majors, those crazy English majors like me, who didn't watch Avenue Q and listen to the song, "What Do You Do with a BA in English?" They actually go into the workforce. You might think they go into graduate school, but about 60% of them go directly into the workforce. Humanities is called the heart of all learning. And it's because, well, teachers make the difference, right? Books are rarely sufficient enough to teach you all the information that you need to know. And the key of the liberal arts is the art of interpreting. Just as I was saying before with my sort of anecdotal story about the TV show, the art of interpreting data, the art of interpreting another person's communication and their angle, that is at the heart of liberal arts. So why not have both? Why can't we have a world where you have trained the workforce in these hard skills? They've learned to code, they've learned to do data analysis, they've learned to they've learned to use Excel, they've learned to use all these wonderful, blockchain and all these, really hard skills that they should have. I mean, they need to be successful, but also to be equally successful and happy and have longevity in their careers is to sort of have an understanding of the human condition. And that's what liberal arts is grounded in the core. And that's where all these essential skills kind of have their birth. Nicholas Whitlam, who is an Australian journalist, he said something in an article in Australia Today a couple of weeks ago, and I loved it. Bashing the humanities is a recipe for a dumb nation. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. Not to be too harsh on the world. But what does it mean to have the liberal arts and to be interdisciplinary? Well, problems never fit in a single box. So when you're designing a course of study, you're going to design something that's cross-disciplinary. You're going to attack a problem from every angle possible. And when you have something that's interdisciplinary or that sort of embraces the humanities together, you're talking about history and culture, but you're also talking about politics. You're talking about media. You're talking about health. Think about it. If you go into public health now, which is the hottest field around, right? and you go into a community and you do not understand the essence of what core beliefs the people of that community have, that's going to affect how they take care of themselves, how they exist in the community. Think of it now. We're here in Florida. Why do some people wear masks and some people don't? It's because somewhere in their core belief system, they they have a belief about what's going on that is affecting their outward behavior and subsequently affecting the transmission of a disease or how their community is impacted. If you think this is a hoax, you're not going to wear a mask, but you might get other people sick. If you think it is completely true and you're worried, then you may not leave your house because you may, Lysol all of your groceries when they come in. Your behavior is completely affected by belief, and yet that has a very tangible impact on you, your family, your society, and understanding that interconnectivity is what interdisciplinary learning is all about. Economics, again, I joke that I'm keeping Amazon in business, but I haven't. My personal, situation hasn't changed. We're still buying the same things we already bought, but we're buying them in a different way. We've adapted to the situation. And can companies see, read the world and predict what they need to do to adapt to survive in the next world? And the environment, our impact on the environment. I think it's one of the first things that came out as a positive of COVID was, that the environment was flourishing because people weren't commuting as much and they weren't, out at the parks and on the beach littering and all the things that we do to damage our world as a society. And yet the study of that really touches more than one discipline. It touches quite a few. And do we understand that these are sort of problems that we can approach and solve and learn from regardless of what field we're in? In researching for this presentation, I came across something interesting that I just wanted to share, just because I think it's cool. So there are 8 Ivy League schools, Princeton, of course, being one of the most notable. And a lot of times people think, well, if you're an English major or a history major, you're just going to go to law school or business school. But Princeton is the only Ivy League institution that does not have a law school, a business school, or a medical school. Those are usually the 3 big hits for graduate education. And Princeton is the only one. Brown has only a medical school, does not have law or business. So, you think of the Ivy Leagues as sort of being this trajectory into the big 3 of law, business, and medicine. And they certainly, in the national rankings, Harvard and the Wharton School for Business, and you have Yale Law and Yale Medical. They're still the kings of those 3 areas as well. But I thought it was interesting that Princeton did not have grad, medical, or business school. So yeah, like I said, your problems never fit in a box. And the more that you can take your pieces of your educational life and make this mosaic that you're going to present to an employer, the more you can show that you have connected neuroscience and cognition with philosophy, religious studies with biology and bioethics, history and geography and political science with one another in your coursework, in your course selection, in your internship experiences, and in your work life. That's how you convey that full picture of what you've done so far and what you plan to do in the future. And how do you stand out, right? So you have this rich educational background, but can you do other things that show that you can demonstrate the soft/essential skills and that you can make those interdisciplinary connections? Well, there are some skills you can pick up. Obviously, we talked about upskilling, being proficient in desktop publishing or Excel. You can acquire a foreign language, or at least be conversational in a foreign language. Now we have technologies to learn from home that many people use. And, even if you are, if it's improving your Spanish, as is my case, I took French in school for some reason, which I kind of wish I took Spanish, but, can you say a few things in Mandarin? It's one of the fastest growing languages for Americans looking to continue in the workforce, or Arabic. Can you put something on your resume that is truly a standout little nugget that's interesting to you, but also gives you that talking point in the interview? It's one thing to say I can use Excel, but how well can you use Excel? Can you deepen your proficiency with coding, with HTML? These certificates and micro-credentials and badges are everywhere, but the most interesting thing that I've seen students starting to do during the pandemic, and our Topple Career Center has encouraged people to explore, is staying busy even while you're on the job search. And one way is through virtual volunteering. So I put a couple of places that are doing virtual volunteering right now that are most well known. One is the Smithsonian. They're looking for digital historians. And basically what they do is they have folks who sign up to make historical documents more accessible and to include, sort of biodiversity and data. They're calling them volunteers, which I thought was really fun, but it's basically adding field notes, going through diaries, old ledgers, handwritten logbooks, and making them digitally accessible. So, that's something. The digital humanities takes a lot of time. And if you are a person who has good communication skills and very good tech skills, and you're looking for a way to show that you can merge these two, that might be something interesting to volunteer for. Project Gutenberg has been around forever, and it's another one. They produce ebooks. So they're looking for proofreaders. They're looking for ways of digitizing eligible paper books for either burning or creating MP3 files for people who have limited internet access or capability, maybe limited streaming services. They're always looking for people to record videos, reading books for those that are visually impaired. So you might want to look at Project Gutenberg. And if you lean more towards the social sciences vibe, Amnesty Decoders is something you might want to be interested in. It's through Amnesty International. It's a very innovative platform of volunteers around the world that use computers, phones, everything from video systems, traffic cams, things like that, to help sift through pictures, information, video, and documents to look for internet trolling, abuse, elements of abuse, and elements of that demonstrate that human rights violations are happening around the world. So, going on social media and sort of investigating around and being a troll, the troll patrol, as they call them, or just being available on a crisis line. If you come into a job interview and you show that during this pandemic, you didn't sit home and, eat a gallon of ice cream and wallow in existential self-doubt, you kept volunteering, you kept engaged, even from your armchair with your laptop. And you did all of these are just a few examples. There are plenty out there, but they all show that you're able to synthesize all of those soft skills and the hard skills. And kind of put it to a good positive use. So I would be remiss if I didn't spend the last couple minutes before we take questions talking about what we do at the university and how we train up the next generation, and what you might consider also doing if you have either just graduated and you're looking at a gap year, or you're trying to figure out, maybe I need to pursue, a one-year master's program or a certificate program in a certain field. So I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation that I work specifically with professional master's programs. And sometimes we toss this word out also with the word specialized. Well, a specialized master's or a tagged master's degree means that you're tagged in a certain field. Examples of this are, a master's of public health or a master's of library science. But then we have these professional master's programs or executive master's programs, and they are defined differently. They typically are shorter length of time. Sometimes they have a different cost structure and sometimes they don't, but they have very flexible course offerings because they're geared towards people that are already working, or the outcome is to get you ready for the workforce. They typically have lower entrance requirements, and it's important to investigate whether they're online or remotely taught. What do I mean by that? Well, an online program, the kind that you might see advertised through, sort of strictly online universities, or the, kind of capsulated programs like Western Governors or Southern New Hampshire, those tend to be canned online programs. They go through at a very a fast pace. They are typically asynchronous, which means there are very few times that you might meet in person over Zoom with a faculty member. You probably are doing a lot of work on your own that's self-paced. Remotely taught is a little bit different, and that's what we're doing at the university. We have a few online classes that, for various reasons are online with some synchronous sessions sprinkled in, but a lot of what we're doing, particularly to prepare for in the fall and what we've done throughout the summer, is remote teaching. Live lectures via Zoom, built-in projects on Blackboard. So it's got a higher level of interactivity than sort of a typical 100% online class. When you're thinking about programs, consult students and alumni. You can reach out. You can reach out to a program. They'll put you in touch with an alumni or a current student, or you can just kind of start hunting around on social media. Consider their resources and facilities that are available even at a distance. So while we cannot invite you right now to our beautiful campus, it'll be open in the fall. The library will be retrofitted for social distancing, and all of the resources that you would have in person are also available at a distance. We also have, things like ranking and accreditation still matter. It's very competitive out there, and going to an R1 or a top tier school, they typically tend to be both, is worth it. It's worth the extra investment because it's another thing, just like learning that other language or virtual volunteering, that's going to get your resume off the pile. And what's the capstone experience? If it's a professional master's program, it probably has an option. You can do research with the faculty, you can do a sort of project, or you can complete an internship to finalize your degree. This is just a little snapshot of where our students went last year. We don't have the new infographic because they just graduated a few weeks ago. But you'll see that most of our students are working in these fields. So Citrix, NBC Universal, Jackson Memorial, Google. We did have quite a few go to Amazon. That should be up here too. And I thought it was that about half of our students completed an internship at some point during their time at the university. But 81%, we're pretty proud of that, 81% secured their postgraduate plan within about 6 months, including a full-time job or graduate school. And we've got some pretty elite places where they go to graduate school if they don't stay at the U, which of course is where we encourage them to do, but Columbia, Boston, GW, and Johns Hopkins. So what can the U do for you? Well, if you're thinking about this, and again, I'm not here to sell you on a program, but if you're interested in expanding your graduate offerings or going back to school, these are just 2 examples of that catalog that I have available. They're 1-year programs. So you start in the fall, you graduate in the summer. And I wanted to put these 2 particularly because they really are the best examples of how we embrace interdisciplinarity. So the first is the Masters of Science in Data Science, but we have 4 tracks: Technical Data Science, Smart Cities, Data Visualization, and Marine Science. So you go into the Masters in Data Science, you take 3 or 4 core courses, and then you are encouraged to branch out into one of these tracks. And if you chose the Data Visualization track, for example, you'd be going to classes at the School of Communication, classes through the Department of English, classes through the Department of Mathematics. Smart Cities is with the School of Architecture. Marine and Atmospheric Science is through Department of Geography and Regional Studies and our Rosenstiel School for Marine and Atmospheric Sciences. They train you in ArcGIS. You get to go shark tagging. A lot of things all about the application of data science in these real fields. The Master of Arts in International Administration, similar. It's an MA program. It's got a heavy social sciences base. And this is for individuals that are either seeking leadership positions in their organization or just want to have that leadership experience throughout their, and in a very global context. So we have security management, which is like an emergency management track, because regardless of where you work, you're going to have to deal with the post-pandemic, the riots, horrible things that happen that threaten the security of your personal security and the security of your employees. Geospatial technology is a track, health equity and human rights, and also risk communication, right? How do we communicate to our employees, to our constituents, to our colleagues when something happens? How are we operationally reorganizing our unit? So that's what MAIA, Master of Arts in International Administration, is all about. And both of these programs are just 2. Again, I have about 15 in different fields: urban sustainability, global health studies, quite a few. But they give you all that I talked about that's important for that, that additional credential that you're looking to add. And the cool thing about being at the College of Arts and Sciences is our classes are from anthropology to zoology, glass blowing to disaster relief. We do a little bit of everything. And before I take questions, I'd like to invite you or tell anyone that you know who is either about to graduate college or has just graduated college and is still looking for some guidance. We're having a really great panel of University of Miami experts from the Topple Career Center, from the libraries, from our Division of Continuing Education. We have an alum, and we have our director of the Money Management Program, and we're going to do a panel on Thursday called Graduating in an Uncertain World, Pathways Through the Pandemic. So if anyone you know has questions about sort of best practices for gap years, maybe how to manage student loan debt, going back to school is one way to defer your loans. We're here for you, and this is open to the public. It's not just for University of Miami students. So do spread the word, and I'll have this on my LinkedIn as well. Again, open to the public, and there's a Zoom link that I'd be happy to send out for the registration. So I'm going to open it up to questions. I put a picture of my wonderful staff because I miss seeing them very much. And also our website for the College of Arts and Sciences is as.miami.edu, but my office is the Office of Interdisciplinary Professional Studies. And then the two programs I mentioned, the Maya program and the MS in Data Science, the websites are there too. And I will stop talking and open it up to questions.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask too, Dr. Tobin, if this, either just this screen or your presentation, if you wanted to send it to me afterwards, we can send that out to everybody that registered through Eventbrite. So make sure that they've got all the links and everything.
Sure.
If anybody wants to take themselves off mute to ask any questions, please do so now. I do have a couple that came to me through private chat.
Sure.
Let me see. So what are the most common questions during an interview that test your soft skills or essential skills during an interview? Like, what are the most common ones that people will get? I guess that it sounds like that they should like prepare for.
Well, definitely we coach our students, and I also, when interviewing people, as whatever soft skills question comes up, you need to have what you've demonstrated. What have you done? So they really want, it's not, like, well, I'm a really good communicator. Prove it. Can you bring, don't just limit your interview to your CV or your resume in hand. Bring stuff. And if you don't have work experience, that's okay. You've done stuff in class. You've done projects for classes. That my wonderful marketing specialist, who I absolutely adore, and who is like, she is sharp as a tack, man. She brought a portfolio of all her classwork because she's just graduated. She said, I did an internship that was brief, but I don't have work experience, but no one will give me a chance. Well, she works for us and she's doing great guns because she brought her class stuff. So bring as many materials as you can that demonstrate all of those skills, how you communicated, how you worked well in a group, how you came up with an outside of the box idea. It's data. It's qualitative data that demonstrates that you're able to do all of those things that we hope, because an interview is very two-dimensional in many ways. So the more evidence you can have that demonstrates that you're able to do that, even if it's a letter that you wrote or an email exchange, something that shows you've got the credentials in those areas.
I think that's a good tip. I commented earlier in the chat you would use the verbiage of creating a mosaic. So I think a lot of times when you talk, it's like almost you're saying to create a visual. Like, so instead of just telling me what your soft skill is, to show me. So I think that's, very important. There's another one that just came through in chat. Can you give us suggestions on how to develop cross-cultural soft skills at work?
Oh, that's good. So they do a lot, and this kind of touches on that institutional culture vibe. So if you're already working in a field or at a company, it's really going to depend on that company's level of buy-in to this institutional culture movement. I'm lucky that we did. So trainings happened where we completely rethought how we did orientation. You've all been to that first day on the job orientation where it's, here's your benefits, here's the person you talk to choose your retirement portfolio, and it's very, it's very heavy. That's all stuff you can read. You can put out a manual, people can read that at their leisure, they can meet with a counselor on their own time and pick their insurance plan. What we do with orientation is really we really inundate everyone with what it means to be part of the university. So we rethought orientation to be, and it's your first day on the job. It's mandatory for everyone. Even the provost went. He luckily fell in love with it. But it's the history of the institution. Again, we're lucky because all of these things are very, they're very ostentatious in a good way. The orange and green is everywhere. You can't miss it. You don't forget where you work because we brand ourselves very well. But when you're talking about cross-cultural communication, going through the experience of getting to know the people that work with you in that way, there's all of these kinds of team building exercises. I think there's one that's like the Herman brain dominance. There's one that's called your true colors, where you do these exercises and what color is your brain? I'm a thinker, I'm a reasoner, I'm emotional. That's all part of our orientation process, because we want you to know where you are in the office and to understand how the other person might react to what you say, and how can you best communicate with them so that they can best communicate with you. So we really, with success, I would say, have really shown that paying attention to institutional culture, paying attention to the emotional quotient of everybody in the office, regardless of their job title, has gone a long way. And I think, getting a little bit back to cultural and being culturally responsive, whether it is, learning about history, religion, philosophy, language, all of that can be built into your team building so that you start to have a better understanding of the people that you work with and where they're coming from. And if you go through that journey together, then you typically have a better outcome. At least that's what we've found.
Very good. We're right at time, but I've actually got 2 more questions. So I'm going to throw these out really quickly. So the question came through of, there seems to be so many different soft skills that are essential or important. So how do I know which ones are the most important? Yeah, they listed like communication, teamwork, critical thinking, whatever. So I guess they're trying to look at like what are the top most important ones.
Well, I think you'll find, like a lot of the disciplines, they do get very interrelated. You can't be, like leadership and teamwork. Well, a good leader has really high teamwork ability. No one wants a leader that doesn't work well in a team, because your leader that's afraid to get their hands dirty is not really that great of a leader. So I think maybe it's not about ranking these in any order, but it's about understanding how they connect to the field that you're going in. You can't be a good team player if you're a bad communicator. You're really not going to contribute a lot to the organization if you're not creative and you don't think critically about every situation. So maybe try not to think of them as a hierarchy, but more as a network. And the more that you can understand how they connect to each other within your field, the more that you will then present yourself as a package that can do all of these things.
I think that's a perfect answer, because coming from staffing, we used to get that question a lot. Just there were a lot of IT folks that, which actually goes into my next question, was there's a lot of IT folks that were, quieter, more shy, didn't feel, super comfortable working in teams. But obviously looking at the job, if you're a project manager, you probably have to be good at working with teams and communication. But maybe if you're a software developer, maybe you're just kind of working on your own thing, sitting at your desk all day doing coding. Maybe it's not as important for you. So there's definitely different roles. And I think, considering which one of those soft skills may be important for like the role that you're looking for.
And don't be afraid to take, if you're still, building your education, take an improv class. Go take a music education class, because if you show, I went to UM and I have my bachelor's in computer science with an expert, in data analytics and blah, blah, blah. But I was a minor in theater arts, and I was in the, production of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. Those are all parts of your DNA that you're saying, I can do all these skills, but I'm also a little bit of a ham, or I'm shy, but I was in, I helped with costuming, or I sold tickets, or I did something else that showed that I have those interpersonal skills. Being in customer service, working in the restaurant industry, working in travel and tourism, in your past is all. I was a cruise director, a youth activities director for a major cruise line while I was kind of, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with life. And it's my little secret thing, but every once in a while, if they need somebody to host an award show or do stuff like this, they're like, well, Maryann will talk, because she used to host bingo on Princess Cruises. I'm like, yeah, that's me.
Yeah,
anyway.
I think that's great. And actually, you didn't even realize it, but you just actually answered the next question, because the next question was that somebody's saying, like, I'm very shy and I'm not great with communicating or, eye contact, but I've already graduated. What other things can I do in between to help me gain these skills? So you were mentioning the improv class. I think just a lot of those things, kind of thinking outside the box. I actually had a friend of mine who she switched careers and was looking to gain experience in public speaking. And she was like, how do you gain public speaking experience without actually doing public speaking? So she used to go to actually a lot of like nursing or old folks homes and just practice on them, yeah, so I think definitely those out of box ideas will definitely help.
And a lot of those, if you just really and truly just Googled virtual volunteering, there's a whole bunch that come up. But think about it. If you can demonstrate, if you can bring with you a file that you read an audiobook for someone who is in, a senior care facility or whatever through Project Gutenberg, that shows that, yeah, I'm maybe not comfortable speaking in front of the crowd, but I have a good speaking voice and I can do things that are not everybody is the ham. I'm a ham. I have no shame, really and truly. But we can't have a whole bunch of hams either. We need people that will also be very good interpersonally. I'm not as good one-on-one. That's something that I'm always working on. And every time I sit and have a meeting with an employee, I have to listen better. And those are things that I know I have to do, because I will talk right over everybody and just, I'm a Leo, blah, 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 blah. So know yourself and say, okay, well, I might not be where I want to get on stage and speak in front of 500 people, but I'm very good, and say that in an interview. I'm very good one-on-one. I'm a good listener. I'm really good working in a pair or in a small group, and that's where I excel. And I'm working on my ability to speak in front of 500 people. So
yeah, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, knowing where you need to spend a little bit more time, but focusing on your strengths and knowing that those are the things you should be going after. I think that's perfect. Well, I think we've answered all the questions. I don't have any more in chat. Thank you again for coming and doing this. It was wonderful. And again, anybody that, wants more information, we'll send a follow-up email out to everybody that RSVP'd through the Eventbrite. And I'll make sure, again, to put Dr. Tobin's, your email and the links that you had in the last screen in there. But thank you, everybody, for joining us. And thank you, Dr. Tobin, again. I really appreciate it.
The U is here for you.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Have a great day. Bye.